Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mayor Cyril Jefferson here convening a special call meeting for the High Point City Council. Here in the room with me, we have all council members present, save Council Member Britt Moore, Council Member Monica Peters. We've got a number of items on our agenda, but prior to going into those, we'll actually move to approve our agenda. Do we have a motion to do that? Second. So motion's made by Councilmember Cook, second made by Mayor Pro Tem Holmes. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? The ayes have it, and we have our agenda. First item for discussion, 2024-065, is an overview on our Public Services Department. Here with us, I see Mr. Robbie Stone, Public Services Director. We'll pass it to you, Mr. Stone. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm Robbie Stone, Public Services Director. I'd like to point out some really other important folks that are here in the room with me. My right hand and my left hand, and I can turn around, they can be either side. So we've got Melinda King. She's Assistant Public Services Director. She's over the traditional public works side, and then Derek Boone, Assistant Public Services Director over the water and sewer side. So they're both with me. Very integral to this operation and grateful for their participation and help with us too. So I'm going to go through, talk through several different items. The last slide is a slide for questions, but if you have a question that you want to ask right then, it may be better because we have several different divisions to cover here. So we'll kind of look through this. So Public Services is probably, you already know, the largest department in the city. We have 325 budgeted positions. There's 16 different divisions. There's 3 enterprise funds within this department. Operational budget's around $59 million, and CIP projects range anywhere from $500,000 up to $40 million.
Mr. Stone, what is CIP?
Capital improvement projects. Yes, sir. Sorry, sometimes we get hooked on our little acronyms.
Still new here, I'm learning the language.
I understand. I am too, so thank you. So the left-hand side at the bottom of the screen, we've broken up those 16 different divisions. This is, the left-hand side is the portion that Derek Boone oversees, so our water and sewer operational admin, our ward water treatment plant, the east side wastewater treatment plant, the west side wastewater treatment plant, residuals management, the laboratory, water sewer plant maintenance, and water and sewer mains. Then the right-hand bottom portion of the screen is Melinda's wheelhouse, so it's the Public Works Administration, street maintenance, cemeteries, stormwater, environmental services, Kersey Valley Landfill, Ingleside Compost Facility, and the Material Recovery Facility, or MRF, as we often refer to it. And we're going to cover most of these in some following slides here. So the first thing I want to talk about is our source water information. When I first came to High Point, one of the things that was on my mind, looking at growth, I said, what's our water sources? So we actually have 2 water sources here in the city, which is amazing. Arnold Kunitz City Lake and then Oak Hollow Lake. So 2 different source waters there. Each of those source waters have a raw water pump station, so we can pump that raw water back to our ward water treatment plant. There's 3 elevated tanks that we have throughout our distribution system. That's one at the I-74 tanker right there at our ward plant. We have another one at Lexington, we call the Lexington tank, and another one called the Potts tank. All 3 of those store 1 million gallons of water in those tanks. And then we have another one up on the north side at Sandy Ridge. It's a ground level tank. It also stores 1 million gallons of water. Another source of water, so kind of redundant backup to our 2 source waters that we have, is the Piedmont Triad Regional Water Authority. So we have an agreement with them where we purchase 2.28 billion gallons of water a day and use that within our system too. So that's just a kind of another fail-safe for us there as well. As you know, we're unique in that we sit in 4 different counties, so Guilford, Randolph, Davis, and Forsyth. But the other unique thing is we sit in 2 different river basins. So the Cape Fear River Basin and the Yadkin PD River Basin. Those river basins have some different guidelines and regulations that we have to abide by. So that's a little bit of uniqueness there. Population's around 117,000. All right, so jumping into those divisions. So the first division we mentioned was our ward water treatment plant. This is located near the intersection of MLK and Pendleton. This is an aerial view of the plant. This plant averages about 13.4 million gallons of water produced each day. It's permitted for 24 million gallons, so we've got some room to grow there. And then along with our PTRWA allocation, we've got plenty of opportunities for growth from the water perspective. This plant began in about 1980. It has 17 full-time positions that work at this plant. You see here on the screen, I talked earlier about the tanks. So these two tanks here I did not mention, but that's our finished water tanks. So we store the water in that. The top one is a 10 million gallon tank, and the lower one is a 5 million gallon tank. So at any moment, we have about 19 million gallons of finished water within our system to be able to push out through our distribution system. The next group is our water and sewer mains. This group is dear to my heart because this is where I started when I came to High Point. Have a lot of history and good memories from there. But our water sewer mains group, so there's got two different portions. The distribution system, so that's the system that's pushing the water out to our customer base. We have about almost 44,000 water accounts. There's 625 miles of sewer, water mains that we have to accomplish this. We do have some data here. Looking back at fiscal year 21, we had 82 water main breaks. 22, we had 115, and then 23, we had 89. Now, a lot of that is really just a function of the weather. With the freeze thaw, as when we have these really cold days, and then just a few days later it gets really warm, that ground starts shifting, and those shifts can cause those water pipes to break. So that's a function of that, along with aging infrastructure. The next portion here is our collection system. So that's what the sewage, we're collecting the sewage and bringing it back to our two wastewater treatment plants. We have almost 42,000 accounts for sewer accounts. There's about 677 miles of sewer lines, and you can see the sewer overflows. Now, ultimately, I want this number to be zero. I don't want to see one drop, but unfortunately, sewer overflows happen from time to time. So you see in 21, we had, fiscal year 21, we had 27 overflows. Fiscal year 22, there was 21, and then fiscal year 23, there was 22. Now, in these overflows, we've seen everything from vandalism to grease. Vandalism being, actually recently we saw someone that appeared had opened the manhole and dumped some bricks in it. So it caused it to back up and overflow. We see grease. Folks will cook and they'll see this grease that's in a nice hot liquid format, pour it down the drain. Well, as that grease cools, it just forms into a big blob and will back everything up. And then we've also seen something that's in the news is wipes. So there's folks will put wipes down the drain, and a lot of the wipes have been labeled as flushable. There's litigation on all that now, so but some of them are not flushable or not as flushable as others, so they will also clog the drains up there. This group has 47 full-time positions in it, and right now we have about 10 vacancies within this group. And I say that to give you an idea as we go through some of these others, the vacancies, and we'll talk about some of the challenges at the end on our vacancies.
Robbie, can you remind us, why is it that there would be a difference between the amount of water and sewer accounts? I guess my theory in my mind is figuring out someone gets water but doesn't get sewer. Does that mean they contract with someone else, or they have a different way of? Yeah, forgive me if I just don't understand it.
No, that's great. Great question. So the quick answer for that is we have a lot of surrounding municipalities and jurisdictions. So we have some accounts in Jamestown. We have some in other locations surrounding us. So we may serve Davidson, for example. We may serve sewer, but not water. In other locations, we may serve water, but not sewer. So we're working with those surrounding municipalities. Whereas maybe they can't achieve for sewer, maybe they can't achieve gravity flow, but we can achieve it for our system, but they can serve them water. So we have some agreements with other surrounding municipalities for that. So that's why the number differs a little bit.
Perfect, thank you.
Good question. Next slide, Eastside Wastewater Treatment Plant. This is down on Riverdale Roads. This is our largest plant. It's permitted for 26 million gallons per day. There's 16 full-time positions allocated to this plant. This is a 5-stage biological nutrient removal plant. Now, that right there to me, for me, after I've kind of got into the wastewater side, and it's a big chemistry lab. You have bugs that you introduce into the wastewater to eat some of the waste. And then you start taking away some of the bugs, and you add some of the bugs back, and those bugs help to balance the phosphorus and the nitrogen so that we can stay within the limits allocated by the state. There are some other chemicals that are introduced into this system, but it's really a large chemistry lab. We have partnerships. It's kind of going along with your question that you just asked. We have partnerships with Archdale, Jamestown, and Sedgefield. We have some agreements with those. Some of those agreements are older than others, and we're working with legal and have conversations with legal about updating those agreements because of some of the age of those as well. This plant began operating back in the 1920s. The last major upgrade was in 2005. And we're seeing some of those results now because plants need to be Lots of modifications need to happen every 15 to 25 years. And we're seeing some stuff break, and you all seen some of the stuff that I brought to you. Seeing some things break here, but it's really related to the hydrogen sulfide, how evasive it is to all metals, whether it's stainless or aluminum or anything else, but it's very invasive to it. So we are in the process of, got several projects going out there, and we'll talk about a couple of those here in just a few minutes. Next is our Westside Wastewater Treatment Plant. This plant is permitted for 10 million gallons per day, so a much smaller plant, but still basically the same concept. We have 13 full-time positions at this plant. It's also the 5-stage biological nutrient removal plant. We do have a partnership at this plant with Trinity. This plant began operating in the 1930s, and the last major upgrade was in 2018. And so I can say with this, since we've been here, this plant has, with that upgrade in 2018, we've had very little issues with it. Everything is much more up to date, and you know, but we know those issues will be coming in the near future. All right, so both plants receive the wastewater, and once that wastewater goes through that system with the bugs and the clarifiers and things like that, so we'll have some solids that are pulled out of that, and those solids are still have a lot of liquid in them. So on the left-hand picture here, that's our centrifuges. So we'll run it through those centrifuges to help de-water some of those, get rid of some of that water from the solids. And then that happens at the east side wastewater treatment plant and at the west side wastewater treatment plant. And then it's all taken down to our incinerator. But both plants, the east side and west side, when they run their items, their sludge through the incinerator, they de-water about 45 million gallons of sludge per year. And then that's taken down to our residual management group, where it's run through the incinerator and burnt and properly discharged. I will say the incinerator is highly regulated. It is extremely difficult to meet parameters because they're looking at air emissions, and air emissions seems to be probably more stringent than anything else that we're dealing with right now. One of the other issues that we're seeing, and it's not necessarily anything we're doing wrong, but there's a lot of turnover to EPA, and each person that comes in seems to be interpreting the regulations a little bit different. And so we're having to sit down and not have arguments, but having a lot of conversation, working back and forth just to make sure we're all on the same page and interpreting everything the same. Water sewer maintenance facilities. This group provides mechanical, electronics, and electrical support to all of our water and wastewater facilities. And so one of the items that they work with is our lift stations. So we have 23 lift stations. So a lift station is where we have gravity sewer pipes that basically drain the sewer to a point, but at that point they cannot continue to drain by gravity because maybe there's a heel or something that they need to pump up to move that sewer over. So we have this lift station that basically pumps that sewer over the hill or down the road until it gets to the next gravity system where it can continue flowing. So there's 23 different lift stations that they're responsible for maintaining and keeping in operation. The 2 raw water pumping stations, which we mentioned earlier, that are our source waters, they maintain those. They also oversee the maintenance at the water treatment plant and then both wastewater treatment plants. This group has about 27 positions that work within that group, within that division. And I want to point out up here on the top right, that's a picture of a new bar screen that we just installed over the past couple of weeks at our east side wastewater treatment plant. That bar screen is basically at the very beginning of the plant. So anything that comes in through the plant is any large items is being caught in that bar screen so it doesn't continue to wash through the plant and maybe bind up or cause some mechanical problems throughout the rest of the plant. So a very important piece of equipment that we've just got installed. I'm very thankful for that. All right, next is our laboratory services. This group is located within our water treatment plant. So there's a full lab within our water treatment plant. They're responsible for testing all the regulated water and wastewater, or testing for all the regulated water and wastewater programs. They perform roughly about 25,000 tests per year and assist with monthly compliance and reporting. There's 10 positions within this group, and there's someone that's in every weekend also to continue testing, because some of the tests have an incubation period and they have to only be run on certain days, and so we make sure that we have full coverage there. But they're focused on hey, are we not only meeting the regulations for putting out safe drinking water, but are we exceeding that? But then also for wastewater, because there's regulations for the discharge of wastewater, so they're looking at that as well, and performing a multitude of other tests for us.
Robbie, the regulatory framework, is it DEQ then EPA, or is it simultaneous report?
Derek, I think it's simultaneous, is that accurate?
It's DEQ, then EPA, but then there's some results we have to send directly to EPA, just
Okay.
really depends.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So another benefit, Derek came from the lab several years ago, so. All right, so that kind of covered the water and sewer side of this, so we'll transition over to the public works, traditional public works side of it. So environmental services, so this group is responsible for collecting the garbage, the recycling, yard waste, and the bulk waste. They have about 49,000 collection points that they collect from each week. There is a central business district group that works on the weekends. They're here Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That started up about a year ago. It's been a great benefit for us, especially as we see growth downtown around the stadium. That group helps out during the furniture market, which has been some good coverage as well. This overall group is heavily involved in the furniture market. You've probably seen them if you've been out and about in the evenings especially. They're coming through typically in the mornings and the evenings and trying to help clear out some of that furniture market waste. This group has 53 full-time positions allocated there, and I think it was last week we had about 7 vacant driver positions. So this group is struggling for workers or for positions. One of the things that we've done, and you may have seen it in some of the announcements, but some of the services may be delayed just a little bit, but what we're doing is this group typically works Monday through Thursday. So they're focusing on all the primary services, but then they're coming in on Fridays and catching up. So we're trying to make sure that we provide all those services during that week, even though we do have the vast number of vacancies, especially with vacant drivers.
Robbie, is it CDL requirements for these trucks?
For the drivers, yes, sir. We do have a few smaller trucks, they call them the pup trucks,
Yeah.
that do not, but they're much smaller capacity, will not handle some of the larger items that are out there.
Yeah, I was wondering if there was a way to kind of diversify the fleet to get some smaller trucks out, maybe expand coverage.
We have talked to fleet about a class of truck that does not require a CDL. Some of the initial concerns is as we grow, we're growing to the north. So this truck will have a smaller capacity and volume that it can carry. And so they're gonna have more drive time
Yeah.
and back and forth to
Yeah.
deliver the waste. So it's kind of a
Yeah,
double-edged
it's
sword.
gonna wear that asset down fast.
Right.
Do we offer a start-in program where they could get their CDLs? How long does that
Yeah.
take?
2 years? Is it 2 years?
So the great thing about this program at this division, they can come in as a worker,
Yeah.
just with a driver's license. With that, from that worker position, they can be promoted up into a special route operator, which is driving one of the little small pup trucks.
Okay.
From there, we have implemented, especially with the CDL and the DMV changes for the CDL a few years ago, we've implemented some internal programs for folks to help train folks so that they can get their CDLs internally. There's lots of other programs out there, but it may take, there's some folks that come to us and said it may be 5 or 6 weeks for them to train an employee to truly get their CDL, but we're basically doing on-the-job internal training, helping them get their CDLs. There's an online testing program that they do, and we keep records of all, there's records kept of all that so that we can help employees advance internally.
And one piece,
Also.
I was gonna say, one point of distinction I'm thinking about in terms of CDL drivers, I know on the transit side, is that there is that 2-year requirement for sake of insurance, if I'm not mistaken. But in this case, they
That's
don't have to
transit, yes,
have,
sir.
they
Yes,
don't
sir.
have
We
to
do not
have, they could be fresh into CDL,
Correct,
right?
correct.
So what do you think the turn would be if somebody came in fast-tracked and then got to where they could drive the big truck with your program?
What would be the time?
Turnaround
The
time.
turnaround time? If somebody's willing to
Yeah.
work and learn this, probably 6 months.
Okay.
And it really is, it's a self-based program as far as the testing, because there's online classes and testing they have to take.
Okay.
Some folks, we Some folks test better than others. The CDL is a pretty rigorous ground test and walk-around test of the truck that some folks struggle with, but we're willing to work with them, and we work with folks that went through this multiple times.
Average pay?
For this one, I think it starts out close to $17 an hour at the beginning pay.
Begin.
Yes.
By the time they get up to being a driver or an operator, what does it get up to?
Well, for the CDL, the entry-level position in the CDL, I believe is about $17 an hour.
Oh, with the CDL 17.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, so our material recovery facility, or MRF, as a lot of us will refer to, this facility receives the recycled goods. So we receive about 13,000 tons per year. And some of those items are plastics, cardboard, scrap metal, paper, electronics, styrofoam, and furniture market items. This facility has 25 FTEs assigned to it. You can see here some folks working on the line, so they're doing some manual sorting. This facility was updated probably 7 or 8 years ago. We did put some automation into it, but there's also still a factor of manual sorting as well. Just on average, and I don't know, since COVID hit, things have changed a little bit, but before COVID, when furniture market would come through, this facility over half of the building would be piled to the ceiling with cardboard. It was just amazing. And then staff has to manually sort through that by hand. Now, they still manually sort through it. We don't have that volume come in at once. It seems to be more spread out, which is better for our operations and our staff. But still, on average, we receive about 500 to 600 tons of cardboard from the market. So it's a great addition there.
And Robbie, I will say, I received some really good reviews from folks, because you all are picking up styrofoam now too, right?
Yes, we do have a styrofoam program in place, and so they're taking that styrofoam and it puts it into a machine. Melinda may be able to explain a little better. It basically melts it down into what's called an ingot, and kind of comes out in a tube type form, and then we'll turn around and can dispose of or get rid of that. But basically, it densifies it. It somewhat melts it down into a much smaller unit. Instead of going to our landfill, and on these windy days, it just blows everywhere, which is awesome, because we don't have the issue at the landfill with the wind-blown litter and trash.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I think they were talking about being able just to set it out on the sidewalk.
Right.
And you all now doing that bulk pickup
Right.
on it.
We've got some folks really working with Market too, with the market folks, to try to help them understand better how to set that out. Because instead of maybe just laying it out loosely, hey, take one of your large cardboard boxes and put it in it. So if we do have a windy day, or the storm comes up before we get to it, it's not blown all over the place. So we've got some flyers and information that we're putting out to the furniture market folks to try to help them help us.
Robbie, have we tried to create any type of circular economy with this, where we sell any of the recycled materials?
So I'm glad you asked, great question, because that was not in here, but yes, we do. All of our materials that we recycle, we do sell on the market, except for glass. A few years ago, glass you were having to pay to get rid of glass. However, our MRF superintendent, Melanie Bruton, who many of you are familiar with, she was at a conference and met up with a gentleman who was looking for an outlet for glass, but their facility was down east. So what we worked out with them is basically we have a bin, an outdoor bin, to where our glass can be placed into. They can also bring glass from some other surrounding areas, kind of as a hub, and then they'll bring a tractor trailer in, load that up, and haul it off, and they haul ours off for free. So we got kind of skirted out of having to pay for the glass portion there, and found that market. But yes, all these other items, once we get enough for a truckload, we do bid those out, and it goes to the highest bidder.
Close your ears, Brett. I know the plastics market, is that recovered? Because I know China at one point was buying a lot of plastics. Has that recovered?
These recyclables kind of follow the fuel. So when fuel prices get high, recycle prices tend to increase. When fuel prices are low, recycling prices drop. So it's really fluctuating with the market. Okay, next is our Ingleside compost facility. Of course, located on the north side of town. We receive yard waste there. Take in about 20,000 tons of yard waste per year. Some of the items that once we take this yard waste in, then we in turn turn around and process these items and process it into compost, wood mulch, leaf mulch, and topsoil. These items we also will sell back to the public. The compost and the topsoil are, am I right, are $22 per ton. The wood mulch and leaf mulch are about $17 per ton. There's 6 full-time positions that work at this facility. And I do want to state that, I said we do receive items here. So you can, as a homeowner, you can bring items in here for free, but you have to be in your personal vehicle. Should be labeled as and it should come from your private property. If that personal vehicle is labeled as a commercial vehicle or something, there's probably going to be some questioning, because we also receive items from private contractors. So private contractors come in, then we charge them. There's a charge of $36 per ton if they can't, if they're not in their personal vehicle and it doesn't come from their private property. So there's that aspect of it. Now, if somebody comes in a pickup truck, but they're not a citizen, or it's not their personal, from their personal property, they can go in for a minimum charge of $7.50 for that pickup load. Or if they're in a car, and we do have folks come out in cars, that's the minimum charge of $2. I always get tickled when I ride by and see a car out there and they've got their trunk popped open and they're getting some topsoil or some mulch, and they're putting in some kind of buckets or something in the trunk. But we did, for safety purposes, we did set aside an area for cars, because we did not like seeing them out there when there's other large trucks or pieces of equipment running around. So we do have a separate area just for folks that are still utilizing their car for this.
Rob, do we have a number on what the revenue is between the MRF and compost and what we sell every year? Do we have a kind of a basic number on what that revenue is?
We can get that. I believe that the Ingleside compost facility is about $800,000 a year on the revenues. The MRF, I'll have to look back because it's so fluctuating. I'll just be guessing if I just said something.
No, it's fine.
Okay. Get those. Kersey Valley Landfill is our municipal solid waste landfill. On average, we've seen up to 150,000 tons per year of waste disposed in this landfill. So that waste is brought from our city environmental services staff, but also from others, from other private haulers, and from folks bringing it from their home. That number's starting to go back down. We saw that 150,000 mark, especially hit during COVID. So everybody was home, they were cleaning out their attics, cleaning out their basements, and so everybody was bringing stuff to us. But we're seeing that number go back down a little bit, which is a good thing for the long term, because it prolongs the life of our landfill. At this landfill facility, if you haven't been out there, you'll pull in. This is a scale house. Over here to the right is our convenience center. So that's if you go out in your a car or a pickup, and if you're like me, I wouldn't necessarily want to drive my personal vehicle up onto the landfill working face there, but you can back up to some dumpsters and offload your items there. There's also an area to offload your white goods, so your refrigerators, your freezers, stoves, things like that. You can leave there. And then we went ahead and put in a recycling dumpster drop-off, because we had folks coming through that may have recycling. And even though the MRF facility is just right around the corner, folks just like, I don't want to waste my time with driving down the road. So we said, all right, let's put a dumpster in here so that we're not taking recyclables into our landfill. This facility has about 19 full-time positions. The cost to dispose here is $42 per ton plus a $2 state tax. And that $2 state tax is mandated, so we just typically tell everybody $44 per ton.
Robbie, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir.
I received an inquiry from someone, in particular some folks from Jamestown, asking about Kersey Valley and I guess hazardous air pollutants and any potential pollutants to water there. I know we've got some safeguards in place to try to ensure that we're mitigating what the harmful effects are, not only to our residents, but in neighboring towns and municipalities. Can you just talk about that briefly?
Sure. So these landfills are lined, so they have a liner in the landfills. Within that, so when it rains, rainwater passes through the waste and is then termed, as the term is given to it, as leachate. So that leachate basically collects in that liner, and we have pumps at the low point of those liners that pumps that leachate out up to a centralized pump station or lift station, which then pumps it over to our east side wastewater treatment plant. So all of that water that's on site, or any waste, this water that passes through waste that's on site, is captured and taken to our wastewater treatment plant. We also have wells installed around the facility, and these wells are tested, I believe twice a year, and going to, I believe, every quarter. for testing. And that testing is looking for a number of chemicals and contamination within the ground. And so that information is not just for our testing, but it's also reported back to the regulatory authority, the EPA as well.
Thank you for that.
So what's the remaining life of this landfill?
So for years, the consultants kept telling us 2035, but our folks keep doing a really good job of getting a great compaction and expanding this and basically just pushing it to the limits. So I believe we're probably getting closer to 2040 now. Now I don't have, that number's not officially in writing, but I believe we can probably say 2040. Next is our stormwater maintenance group. This group kind of has two different groups within it, or two subgroups. So one is more of our field workers. The other is more of our inspection side. One of the large items that they're responsible for is the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. This permit is, they basically oversee that we abide by this permit, we meet all the guidelines and regulations for this. And within that, we have maintenance in the right of way. So just like you see right here, this ditch probably at one point had filled in with silt. So it was not draining properly, or maybe it was holding water. So they've come in, they've cleaned this ditch out, and you can see the driveway pipe up at the top of the screen there. So that now when it rains, that water exits the roadway properly, but then also it runs down through the ditch to its final point location as well. This group cleans and inspects about 15,000 feet of pipe a year. We have street sweepers. So these street sweepers, they sweep about 2,500 miles of curb each year. The inspection group, as I mentioned, they go out and do pond inspections. So if there's stormwater ponds in neighborhoods, we have some regional ponds and some dams as well. They're going out and looking at those and inspecting those to make sure that they're being maintained, so they're not letting trees grow up on them, that they're keeping proper maintenance so that they do function as designed. And then if there's illicit discharge or spills, we've had times where industries have maybe opened the wrong valve and released some stuff, or maybe there's an accident on a roadway and something hauled in a truck spills. So this group goes out there and they're working closely with the fire department and potentially others to make sure that we capture this item and that it doesn't get into our stormwater system and eventually make it to our drinking water supplies. This group has 27 full-time positions, and they have 10 vacancies within this group. Our street maintenance group, their primary role is maintenance within the right-of-way. We have about 450 centerline miles of streets that they maintain, and about 3 miles are gravel streets. And I know you say that's very small. It is, but I will tell you, when we have heavy rains, we have some of these gravel streets have more traffic than others. It'll wash those heavy rains will wash that gravel out maybe onto the paved road. So we're spending a lot of time sending folks back out to maintain those gravel streets, regrade and reblade that. We do have a line in our budget where we're accruing money so that we can eventually, hopefully soon, go back out and maybe pave these streets. But it's not as easy as just paving them. We have to look at, all right, is the right-of-way width proper? Do we need ditches? Do we need stormwater pipes? There's more than just putting the asphalt down on the roadway. So there's some other factors that go into it, hence making that final cost increase quite a bit there. This group also takes care of the pothole maintenance. They oversee the paving. This picture here of the roadway, they're fixing a pothole, but I want to reference it for paving. There's no curb and gutter here. So this group typically paves streets that we call ribbon paved streets where there's no curb and gutter. The reason we do that is with curb and gutter streets, we'll bring in some contractor through our larger resurfacing contract, and they'll mill that asphalt down so that when we pave, we don't either have a lip that drops off at the gutter or we don't pave through the gutter, because we want to maintain that full gutter depth to carry that stormwater when it does rain. They also perform concrete repairs, and this can be on the sidewalk or it can be on the curb and gutter. Loose leaf collection. Thank goodness we just finished that not long ago. Hopefully you didn't get any complaints about it. This was one of the best years we've had or you got minimal complaints, hopefully.
I was gonna say,
We always get complaints. This is one of the best years we've had as far as equipment operating. And I know it was a dry fall, dry winter, but that being dry actually helped that equipment. The equipment does not like it when the leaves are wet. It tends to cause some bearings to go out and some impeller issues and stuff, but it being dry, leaves fell quicker. We were able to get out there and vacuum those up, and it worked out really well for us this year. The other thing this group is heavily involved in is if we have snow, and I hope and pray I'm not talking this up, but if we have snow or ice, they're responsible for plowing and salting for these areas. The stormwater group also helps them with that as well, in plowing, salting. Also, if there's inclement weather, if we have a major storm blow through, whether it's a tornado or whatever else, and trees are in the road, these two, stormwater and streets, they're out there and helping to clear open those roads. There's about 40 full-time positions assigned to this, and this group has 17 vacancies right now. So, 17, yes. Yes. All right, so our last division I want to highlight here, and I say this kind of jokingly, but kind of seriously. Public services, we've always said we take you from cradle to grave. So you might think about it. We provide the water and sewer. We give you the roadways to get to and from locations, collection of the garbage and recycling, and then also we have cemeteries that we maintain. We list 4 cemeteries. Oakwood actually has 2 separate cemeteries. There's a municipal cemetery and what used to be a private cemetery, but now that's really just one overall. That cemetery is 30 acres in size. Green Hill is 11 acres. Kersey Valley, there's a small cemetery at Kersey Valley, right next to the landfill. So if you drive out to the landfill, you may have seen the cemetery out in the grass area. That's not the one I'm referring to. This one's a little small cemetery back up in the woods there, but it's less than an acre. There's four positions assigned to this division, and they're constantly out there running back and forth. This when the growing season hits, these folks are just wide open, working out there. A question we often get asked is do you have room for additional capacity, additional graves? Right now, my response is no. And that reason being is, especially, we'll use Oakwood as a reference. When we took over the private side, the private portion of the cemetery, we had a couple instances where we went to bury someone and there was already a grave in that spot. So, worst time of somebody's life, you've got to go tell them, I'm sorry, we can't bury your loved one here. Thankfully, we were able to find some folks who wanted to sell some plots, and we bought a few plots. So we do have a few plots of our own, but we're holding those just in case that comes up again. Part of that is due just to poor record keeping, and just the age of the cemetery. Green Hill, for example, we do believe there's some more plots at Green Hill, but we've done some test digging out there, and there's a lot of rock, and I don't think we could get any graves dug out there because of the amount of rock that's out there. In Kersey Valley, that's so old, there's a lot of those are just really old headstones out there. All right, moving on, capital projects. We do have several capital projects going on. Just a couple we'll highlight. Our Eastside Wastewater Treatment Plant, one that you all approved, and we've just gotten started on this, is our ultraviolet disinfection upgrade. This is the very last piece of the plant, so as that water has been through the treatment process, the ultraviolet violet rays are basically killing any bacteria that still may be remaining in that water. One of the things I want to highlight on this is the engineer's estimate was, before we bid, it was $9.7 million. When it was bid, it was $16.2 million. Shock and a heart attack just about for me there. We were able to go through some value engineering with the low bidder and did get that number down a little bit. So that was good, but it's still higher than our engineer's estimate. The Eastside, another project coming up is our Eastside PLC, is programmable logic control and the SCADA system upgrades. We have not bid that out yet. Our estimate's $1.3 million, and we're looking for it to come in very close to that.
The reasons for that, Delta, I'm assuming it's just your typical reasons right now: cost for labor, cost for supplies, demand for contractors, all that.
That's what we keep hearing. These items, these projects too, have an electrical component to them, and electricians are very few and rare, I guess. Now they're just overloaded with work as well. Next is our Register's Creek lift station. Now this project's just about finished, but it was construction of a new lift station to provide a 4.2 million gallons per day, and then we also installed about 16,000 feet of 18-inch force main. This did replace an existing station. The cost of this one was $8.5 million, and the engineer's estimate on this one was $7.7 million. So much closer, but still there was a difference there. All right, and a big one, City Lake Dam. This dam is nearly 100 years old and was constructed before the modern safety standards were developed. It does not meet the current safety requirements for stability or spillway capacity. So design is underway. Design right now is in 2 phases. We're in phase 1 of the design. That phase 1 consisted of a lot of exploration, surveying, so surveying the lake, surveying the existing dam, doing some test boring, test drills, just to see what's actually underneath those layers there, so that they can then bring back to the table for a final design of a new dam just downstream of this current dam. Estimated cost at this point is about $30 million. That could change, but that's where we're at right now.
Is there any kind of concern that it'll fall apart?
No concern.
I mean, if you get like a big
Right.
rain or something.
No
is there-
concern. The engineer and others have been really impressed with the stability of it, but it just does not meet the current safety requirements for stability or spillway capacity. Now, we did, this was a previous group, but we did talk to them. They gave us kind of some guidelines or guidance. We could either rehab the existing or build a new one. And of course, building a new one's a little more, at their estimate at that time, was a little more expensive, but it gave you almost double the life of what rehabbing the existing. So,
We're not incurring any fines or anything because
No,
we're
sir.
not compliance, right?
No, sir. see, a lot of times on the water and sewer projects, once you get to a capacity
Yeah.
or issue like that, as long as they know that as long as the authorities know that you're working towards it, there's no fines. Focus areas, present and future. So one of the things that we're just facing and we've got to deal with is emerging contaminants. You've probably heard or read or seen something about PFOA, PFAS, forever chemicals. These are basically various fluorinated compounds that are probably exist quite a bit in this room right here and everywhere else in society. Some folks have predicted there's up to 12 to 15,000 different combinations of these compounds that exist. So the EPA, they're on board with saying, we've got to get this out of the water, we've got to get this, they're also looking at the wastewater, and they're also looking at the landfill leachate. There's a lot of question as to, well, how do we actually do this? How do we actually remove this? Without breaking the bank, so to say. I will say a neighboring community has looked at their water treatment plant and installing a system based on their limits. Installing a system to treat this is going to be $1 million per 1 million gallons of water that they produce. So if we were equivalent, then that means $24 million just to install that equivalent system at our plant. Now, I don't think we're in as bad a shape as they are. I think we're much better, but just kind of give you an idea of where this could go. Now, the wastewater amounts, treatment, there's nothing in the, I guess, no definitive best practice for treating that, but I'm anticipating it's going to be a higher amount whenever we do get to that limit of that treatment. Lead and copper rules, we're working with a consultant on that as well, just kind of investigating, do we have any lead, do we have any galvanized lines within our system? We don't know of any that we necessarily have within our system that would fall under these rules and revisions. However, we're having to, per these rules and regulations, we're having to go out and do test holes. We have about 400 locations that we have to test, and that's testing on each side of the meter just to verify what that material is. We've gotten through about 150 or so of those test holes now. Coming in October of 24, we have to also go back out to the schools and the daycares and do testing within those. Now, that testing has already been done in past years, and most people across the nation have done that. However, the EPA is saying, sorry, you got to do it all over again. So we'll have to go back out and start that testing and go through those process and procedures for the lead and copper. We do have aging infrastructure. So we're working on improving our CIP planning. We do have implementation of water and sewer master plans. A water master plan, it identifies needs for water, for changing old pipe, for replacing old pipe. Our sewer master plan, we've got one that's currently ongoing. We just kind of got some results back from that. And it identified several capacity needs within our sewer collection system. The high-level review of that come back and said there's about $200 million of needs within that sewer collection system. We have worked with, we've got about, I think, 2 items going tonight, and there's been a couple other items previously where we've selected a consulting firm to focus on one small area and say, hey, can you focus on this and help us understand what size should this pipe be looking at future growth, or what size should this lift station, can we just increase the pumps, or do we need to build a whole new lift station? What's the best thing we need to do for our future growth? We have had some consultants call, and of course, or not consultants, but developers contact us and said, hey, why can't I get capacity? And so, I talk them through that process. And I've given some of them the option and said, hey, if you can help in any way, financially or whatever, you want to help speed this up, I'll be more than willing to sit down at the table and talk this through with you. Been no takers on that yet. So we do have a rehabilitation of existing infrastructure, just trying to focus on what we can do there as well. Increased construction costs, we've already hit on that a
Are
little
there
bit.
any particular areas of an existing infrastructure that are on the list of things to address sooner rather than later?
I can tell you, like, there's one area, we call it the Shady Brook Lift Station. So just north of I-74, and I guess off of Aberdeen area, I guess, up in there. That area is at capacity based on the preliminary study that's come back to us. So we cannot have any more growth right in that area. Because the lift station, there's a lift station that's at capacity. There's gravity lines upstream and downstream that are at capacity. And then with the lift station being at capacity, the force main is essentially at capacity as well. NCDOT maintenance responsibilities, we do mow, a lot of mowing on NCDOT streets, and our streets group does this. They also make pothole repairs, things like that along the NCDOT streets. There is an agreement in place where we get reimbursed for that. That agreement has not been updated in years. However, we do have, working on that agreement now for, it looks like it's going to be a small increase, not a huge one, but a small increase. So we're grateful and thankful for that versus nothing at all. So.
How often do we look at that?
Yeah.
When you say it's been years and years, is that on a regular schedule that alerts us that it's time to look at this?
I won't say it's on a regular schedule. However, we have reached out a few times in the past, and there's been no participation or willingness to participate. Melinda and her staff this time maybe got a hold of the right person, maybe persistence of Melinda and others, but they were.
So they have no requirement to municipalities on when they have to engage with you?
No, sir.
Rob, is there some kind of trigger or agreement that says when an area is untouched for a certain period of time, the city will take it versus when DOT will take it in terms of that? Because there's areas of the city that goes a long time that without being mowed, and then is it you gonna get it or I'm gonna get it? How do we determine who's gonna take that and when?
Great question. I don't think there's anything in writing. I don't think there's even anything unspoken for that. I think the limitation on that comes back to our staffing. It's that streets group that performs most of that mowing. That's a group we had 17 vacant positions in. And if we had staffing and I have support from my management and the group here to take on more, then I think we'd be willing to do it.
Yeah, because I know sometimes we end up with that kind of the ski club Wendover area, that corridor that is often untouched and it's unsightly.
Right.
And I get a lot of calls about it, and so I essentially tell them what you just said. Unfortunately, that's often not satisfying to folks, so.
Yes. Yeah. So the ski club is a very interesting one. So that one, the way the NCDOT conducts their landscaping is at the end of the construction project, they see what funding, make sure they have funding remaining, and then they take a percentage of that construction cost and put it towards vegetation.
Yeah.
But at that point, there's still no design on the vegetation. So So we're in the talks with them now, saying, well, what are you planning on putting in here? What, we really didn't, at the beginning there, when a lot of those complaints came in, it was still our understanding that the state, it was still in
Yeah.
state maintenance and control. And so we just kind of jumped in and tried to make it look a little better for the short term.
Is there, well, in those discussions, I know that last year, maybe year before last, we achieved the official designation as a bee city. Any plans to put the pollinator attractor plants in these areas?
That is, so we're still waiting on the state because they were going to get with their landscape architectural group and bring some items back to us. One of the comments we had about something like that, and when I think of that, I'm thinking of kind of like a wildflower type area.
Yeah.
One of the comments that's come back to us is, well, it's just gonna catch litter and just be like a litter catch
Yeah.
down through there. And as much as I would love to see it, the pollinator, set up, we need to make it where we can
Sure.
at least get in there and clean that litter up too, so.
Thank you.
Next, we kind of mentioned, I mentioned as we went through the different divisions, some of the staffing challenges. It's just an ongoing struggle to find experienced employees. We've had several different things that we're trying to do. Back in January, we had a one-day hiring event. I will tell you, we had a large number come to that group, a good turnout. We selected what we felt was the best of the best on that and submitted those names for background check, education check, and things like that. At least over the past 2 weeks, I believe there was 4 of those who refused to take a drug test, failed a drug test, or just blatantly didn't show up for the physical drug test. So that's the struggle right there. But we're continuing on. We're just coming down the list. All right, well, that was our top group, so let's go down to the next group and see if they'll come in and be willing to work and test. We've also worked with our Guilford Apprenticeship partners with Guilford County Schools. This is a great program. It's a 4-year program for the student to get a 2-year degree. But during that 4 years, they're a full-time employee with the city. They work about half the time. They go to school about half the time. At the end of that 4 years, they've got their degree, and hopefully we'll have us a good long-term employee that's trained, that's plugged in, and we can grow with us. Last year, we also went through a salary study, had some good results from that. But I'll just be honest with you, you all may have heard it too. You go out and meet some of the frontline staff, they're still complaining about salaries. Look at neighboring municipalities, some jobs we're higher on, some jobs we're lower on. And then you see staff jumping back and forth some, so it's just a struggle there with that. Future and current growth areas, sewer capacity, just mentioned that. Sewer is a major concern of mine right now. Currently updating that sewer master plan. And then our East Side wastewater treatment plant, we've worked on a plan to expand that. That expansion would be from 26 million gallons per day to 32 million gallons per day. However, we have not taken those next steps to really lock ourselves in, because we have verbally been told from the EPA that, hey, if you do this, we're going to give you some really tight limits on these emerging contaminants. And as far as how to treat those emerging contaminants, how to meet those limits, nobody really knows yet. We're not really confident of how to do that. So I don't want to set ourselves up so that we're going to be in violation, or we have to go down a legal road or whatever and fight this out right now when we're still not at a point where we have to have that extra capacity right now. One last area here to talk about is our regional wastewater discussion. So this kind of ties into that last comment there. With the state-led effort to bring in several different groups across the state as far as growth, we've seen a lot of potential growth. So water is not an issue to get out here to these different companies and supply water, but sewer is really more the issue. And so PTRWA, that's the Piedmont Triad Regional Water Authority, they've kind of been the focal point of this, but they've gotten a group together, several together, those being Greensboro, Archdale, Asheboro, Jamestown, Liberty, Randolph County, Randleman, Ramseur, Franklinville, and possibly others to come to talk about, hey, we can provide water, but we need to be able to provide sewer too. Because a lot of these areas have really small capacity sewer plants, maybe they're failing plants, and so we're working with them kind of working as a group to see, hey, what's the possibility of a regional study? I know you probably can't see this, I'm sure you can't see this well. But this is an overall map showing a lot of those different groups in that whole area. So kind of up here at the top is Greensboro, have High Point, have Asheboro, we even come all the way over here to Siler City. So there's growth all in this area. And so that's kind of what we're talking about, the Regional Sewer Authority. This number here, the $60 million, that's for High Point. That's a force main to push some of our sewer over to a main outfall that would go down somewhere towards the Asheboro area. And that main outfall, they're saying roughly is $350 million. So some really large numbers on here. And this is conversations are being had, and there's other folks that are involved, but, you know, reaching out to the state and regulators saying, hey, you know, we're bringing all these companies in, we need some help for funding to be able to provide this sewer needs as well out there. So that's the ongoing topic, ongoing discussion that we're having as well. All right, I know that was maybe quick, maybe not quick enough, but do you have any, there are several questions asked, but are there any other questions? Damon, anything that I missed from your perspective?
Absolutely not.
Great job.
If no one has any questions for Robbie, thank you for that very comprehensive overview, Robbie. We'll move on to item 2024-068, joint legislative update from City Manager Tasha Liverpool.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. One of the, going back to one of the comments that Robbie had made while he was talking, as part of Greensboro, Guilford County's retreat, they did ask for a representative from the city of High Point to come because we're having a broader discussion that talks about the need for us to address sewer capacity. Although it really impacts some of the smaller jurisdictions, we wanted to make sure that we had somebody there that could be part of that conversation. So I wanted to make sure that you all knew that as well, in case you see that we have a High Point representative that would be there as part of that larger discussion that will take place around sewer. So I wanted to briefly share with you all some of the work that we've been doing around our legislative agenda as we're getting ready to get started for our short session. Typically, we will have our legislative agenda that staff works on, and we'll share that with you all, and then we'll meet with our legislators. Last year, we did this in early March, met with some of our state legislators with the mayor over in Greensboro, and we're gearing up to do that again this year. Last year, we had some success. I apologize for how I sound. We had some success last year with a joint legislative agenda with the High Point market. And all of you, I think, are familiar that we got a $9 million allocation that was spread out over 2 years. And this was really geared toward us focusing on Main Street, on South Main. We realized the interchange was occurring. We wanted to see some additional improvements in the market district. This also tied into council's thoughts and ideas about how we improve walkability along Main Street, and then also being able to eventually connect to improvements along Lexington and Main and going up the Lexington corridor. So we're trying to figure out how we can impact segments along the road and connect all of this together so that we can have increased mobility for our citizens here in High Point. So that one-time request was a joint legislative ask between the city and the High Point Market Authority. And it was focused on maintaining the current operational dollars for the market, but then having the additional $9 million one-time request for us to do those projects that were highlighted below. It includes utilities going underground, pedestrian lighting, cleaning the terminal, graffiti removal, all of those things for enhancements of downtown. So we really tailored the ask around these things as a joint legislative agenda. We also had items that were specific to the city, and this was a document that we shared with our legislators last year. I just wanted you all to be able to see that again as a refresher. It's the first time some of you are probably seeing this. But the City Lake Dam, we asked for $1.5 million to help start the study of what it would take to replace the dam. I'm happy to say that we were successful in getting that to come through. We also had requested $1.5 million to help with water and sewer main replacement, just thinking about the infrastructure needs that we have throughout the city. We requested $2 million for small-scale manufacturing initiatives. This was tied to our 300 Oak Street project. And then we also requested $2 million to help jumpstart some of our needs around affordable housing. That 10,000 units of 10,000 affordable units would be needed in the city of High Point, and we want to start chipping away at that number. So $2 million was what we requested last year. As I said, I think we knew going in that what we really wanted to do was to leverage the ask that we had with the market, but we also wanted to make sure that our delegation understood what was important from the city in terms of our infrastructure, our housing, but then also our Catalyst 2.0 project at 300 Oak. So as I said, we were successful with getting the 1.5 million in addition to the 9. So this year, we also have a joint legislative agenda. We started meeting with our partners at the Chamber late December, early January. And it was the City of High Point, the High Point Market, Visit High Point, and then the Earl and Catherine Condon Foundation. Those are the partners that came together. We had a series of meetings with the Chamber Government Affairs Committee to outline 3 big projects that we wanted to put forward for the City of High Point. These projects don't mean that as a city organization we won't have some other priorities. I fully anticipate that we will still want to talk with our delegation about our small-scale manufacturing efforts. There's money that they've provided to support Business High Point in that in previous years. We know that our infrastructure, water and sewer, is still a priority for us, and housing is still a priority that will be on our list. But these 3 projects that you see here, these are the ones that are shared in your agenda packet, are the ones that all of these entities are jointly talking about with our delegation together as one group. The first one, the Lexington Avenue Gateway Project. This is not a financial ask associated with this, but this is really about how are we going to alleviate congestion along that East Chester and Highway 68 corridor. Since Jamestown Parkway has been done, you now have that 5 Points area, so how do we make improvements along that entire stretch of Lexington as you're coming into the city of High Point? We realize that when you look at that project on paper, it doesn't necessarily score well in the state transportation plan, but we realize that it's important for our city, which is why we're pushing that one forward. The other is thinking about our High Point Athletics Complex. This is in partnership with Visit High Point. There are a number of youth sporting events that we would like to host in High Point. That is something that our neighbors are actively engaged in that market, and we think there's an opportunity for High Point where we can leverage some of those visitors to increase tourism and also help with our local economy. So being able to have turf fields at the athletic complex would be huge for us. It also gives us the opportunity to partner more with Carolina Core FC and their youth development programs with their soccer leagues to engage more students around recreation activities in the city. And then the last project that we have as a joint legislative ask is around our housing investment strategy. Here, the number is $2 to $3 million. We realize that we have private developers and also some of our foundations that have started to engage in conversations with us around how do we really jumpstart the need to invest in the core of our city. We want to make sure that we can have healthy housing options for all High Pointers regardless of their income level. And this is a way for us to get started both with the city investing, but also with some of our private partners and the foundation. So those 3 were priorities that all of these entities and organizations felt like we could get behind and support. And we have been having those conversations with our legislative delegation. I want to thank Councilmember Peters for joining me at our first meeting that we had. These meetings are hosted by the Chamber. First one was on January 19th. And there you can see the participants that were at that first meeting. We had Representative Brockman, Representative Fairclough, Representative Hardister, and then they also invite some candidates that may represent our region to join those meetings as well. And we kick off with each entity talking about our priorities. Our legislators ask questions about the projects, and then we just have some discussion. The next one is scheduled actually for tomorrow. You'll see those that will be in attendance at that next meeting. So if any of you have received those invitations, please let me know if you'd like to attend, because we do have a couple more spaces that are there if you would like to go and be part of the conversation. I think the last thing that I would share is that, like I said, typically in March is when we have more of a small group conversation with our Guilford delegation. We did get a note last week that Senator Garrett has reached out with an initial date for us to set up that visit. We're looking at March 4th, but we don't yet have a time. So as we're getting those times outlined, we will share those with council. We'll continue internally as staff to evaluate projects, especially around infrastructure and housing, to figure out what projects make sense for us to put forward. We are looking at whether or not we need to expand our lobbying efforts. We have our current lobbyist, is Mr. Fred Baggett. He gives us regular updates throughout the session. As we're moving forward with some of these joint legislative priorities, it would be advantageous for the city to expand our reach, to partner with the lobbyists that the chamber is working with and also some of our others. So I have been having a conversation with that lobbyist about what that engagement would look like for the short session. And also having some conversations because they would need to work jointly with our existing lobbyist, Mr. Baggett, through this short session to get these things moving forward. But so much of this is about the relationships that you're able to build. We're also still evaluating a request for the city to be able to have some additional authority through a local act for us to dispose of city-owned property as we're looking at different development opportunities, especially in the core of downtown. I'll continue to work through that with our city attorney, and she'll work with our lobbyists to get the language for that in place. And then the final piece is there was a bill last year that was associated with the extension of our Samet Drive. That one stalled in the legislature last year, but we'll continue to monitor that bill. We're continuing to move forward with that project, but being able to address the right-of-way and cleaning up that right-of-way ownership would be helpful for us in the long term with that project. So we'll continue to monitor those bills. But nothing really earth-shattering with this, but I wanted to make sure that you guys, as a council, those joint legislative priorities that we're talking about, you all knew about those. They're all things that have been part of our priorities as a city, strategic initiatives. And we'll be finalizing the ones for early March by the end of February. And if there are any others that have come to mind, especially since we just had our council retreat, we're taking that information into consideration too. Please just reach out to me or staff in the office and we'll make sure that we cover those things as well. All right, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. All right, any questions for Madam Manager before we transition to our next agenda item from council? All right. Our next item is a closed session attorney-client privilege. Is there a motion to go into closed session? Second. Motion made by Councilmember Peters, second by Councilmember Johnson. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it, and that motion passes.